Tom's barn stood quietly at the edge of his small farm. It was old, with wooden beams worn by years of sun, wind, and rain. But to Tom, it was much more than just a barn. It was a place full of memories, a place where his family's story lived. Every morning, Tom would walk to the barn with a warm smile. He loved the smell of fresh hay and the soft creak of the wooden floor. Inside, he kept old tools, his children's bicycles, and boxes full of things he wanted to save for later. But the barn was not just for storing things. It was where laughter lived, where stories were told, and where Tom's family grew closer. When Tom's kids were young, they would play hide and seek among the tall stacks of hay. The barn was their secret world. On rainy days, they would gather inside to watch the rain drop on the roof, their eyes wide with wonder. Tom would sit with them, telling stories about when he was a child, making them laugh with his silly voices and funny faces. Those moments were precious to him. The barn was not perfect, but it was full of love. Tom had built the barn himself, brick by brick, nail by nail. When he was younger, before his children were born, he had dreamed of having a place like this. A place where his family could be safe and happy, where they could watch the seasons change together. It was a dream that took many years to come true, but Tom never gave up. The barn was also a symbol of hard work and hope. Tom worked long hours in the fields, but every evening, he found strength when he saw the barn waiting for him. It reminded him why he worked so hard for his family and for the simple joys that made life special. But times were changing. The quiet farm neighborhood where Tom lived was no longer the same. New houses were built, roads were paved, and people from the city came to live there. The small community started to look more like a modern neighborhood. Everything was clean and perfect: freshly painted fences, trimmed lawns, and neat gardens. One day, Tom received a letter from the Homeowners Association, called the HOA. It was an official notice, printed on plain white paper with a cold, formal tone. The letter said that his barn was not up to code and posed a safety risk to the neighborhood. The HOA demanded that Tom tear down the barn within 2 weeks. Tom felt his heart drop as he read the words again and again. Not up to code. Safety risk. These words felt like a knife cutting through his chest. The barn had stood strong for more than 20 years. It had never been a danger to anyone. But the HOA didn't seem to care about his feelings or memories. They cared only about rules, order, and making everything look perfect. He tried to talk to the HOA board, hoping they would understand. At the community meeting, Tom stood in front of the group, his voice shaking but firm. "This barn is more than just wood and nails," he said. "It holds my family's history. It's where my kids grew up, where we shared happy times. Please don't make us tear it down." But the board members were unmoved. One man in a sharp suit said, "We must keep the neighborhood safe and beautiful for everyone. Rules are rules." Another woman added, "We all agreed to follow the HOA guidelines when we bought our homes." The room was cold, filled with nods and quiet agreement. No one spoke for the barn. After the meeting, Tom walked home slowly. The sky was gray, and a soft wind blew through the trees. His eyes felt heavy with tears, but he didn't cry. He just looked at the barn once more, as if saying goodbye. That night, Tom sat on the porch with his wife, Mary. She held his hand and said softly, "We will find a way. We always do." But Tom wasn't sure. How could they fight against a powerful group that cared more about rules than people? The next few days passed like a bad dream. Neighbors who once smiled at Tom now avoided him. Some whispered behind his back, saying he was difficult or stubborn. The barn, once full of life, felt silent and sad. One afternoon, Tom walked inside the barn. He ran his hand over the old wooden beams and looked at the old tools hanging on the walls. Dust floated in the light coming through the cracks. For a moment, he imagined the barn as it used to be, full of laughter and love. He wished he could freeze time. Tom decided to take pictures of the barn, to save its memory. He took photos of the faded paint, the rusted nails, and the places where his children had scratched their names into the wood. He wanted to remember everything before it was gone. The day the demolition crew came, Tom felt a strange emptiness. He watched as workers in hard hats pulled down the walls, hammering and sawing. The smell of sawdust filled the air, mixing with the heavy silence. His children stood quietly beside him, their eyes wide and sad. As the barn disappeared piece by piece, Tom's heart broke a little more. It was not just the loss of a building, it was the loss of a place where his family had dreamed, laughed, and loved. That night, Tom sat alone in the dark. The space where the barn once stood was empty, cold, and lifeless. But inside, Tom's spirit was not ready to give up. Somewhere deep inside, a small fire of hope still burned. He knew that even if the barn was gone, the memories and love it held would never die. The morning after the barn was gone, the neighborhood felt different to Tom. It was as if a part of his world had been taken away, not just a building, but a piece of his heart. The empty space where the barn used to stand looked strange and lonely. The earth was bare, and the wind whispered through the empty air. Tom woke early that day, as he always did. But the sun seemed less bright, and the birdsong less cheerful. He walked outside and looked toward the empty lot. His eyes filled with sadness. He missed the barn already, the sound of the creaking door, the smell of hay, the warmth it gave to his family. Mary came outside, carrying 2 cups of tea. She sat next to Tom on the porch and sighed softly. "I know it hurts," she said. "But maybe we can find a way to heal." Tom nodded, but he was not sure how to heal from this. The barn was more than just a building. It was where his children learned to ride their bikes without fear. It was where they hid from thunderstorms and told secrets late at night. The barn held their family's stories. As the days passed, Tom felt a deep anger inside. It was not just sadness, it was a strong feeling of unfairness. The HOA had destroyed something precious without really understanding what it meant to him and his family. Tom wanted to fight back, but he didn't know how. One afternoon, Tom decided to visit the community park. It was a place where families gathered, children played, and neighbors talked. But today, the park felt quiet. People who used to smile and wave at Tom now looked away or whispered behind their hands. Tom felt lonely. He missed the friendly faces, but he also understood why. Some neighbors believed the barn was an eyesore, something that made the neighborhood look messy and old-fashioned. They thought Tom should follow the rules, just like everyone else. Still, Tom could not forget the barn. He kept walking past the empty space, looking for any sign of life. One day, he noticed a small wildflower growing where the barn's wooden door had stood. The flower was bright yellow, small but strong. It made Tom smile. Life could still grow here, even after the barn was gone. Tom's children tried to help him feel better. His son, Max, brought home a small wooden box he had made in school. "I want you to keep your memories safe, Dad," Max said shyly. His daughter, Lily, drew pictures of the barn, with bright colors and happy faces. "Look, Dad. The barn is still here in my drawing." Tom kept those gifts close. They reminded him that the barn's spirit was alive inside their hearts. But at night, when the house was quiet, Tom often found himself staring at the empty lot, wondering what he could do next. One day, Tom's friend, Sam, came to visit. Sam was an older man who had lived in the neighborhood for many years. He had seen the changes come and go, and he understood Tom's pain. "Tom," Sam said gently, "sometimes people don't understand the value of what they have until it's gone. But that doesn't mean you have to give up. There are other ways to fight, ways that show your strength without causing harm." Tom looked at Sam, grateful for his words but unsure what to do. The HOA seemed too strong, too powerful. But Sam's advice gave him a small hope. Over the next few days, Tom began to watch the neighborhood more closely. He noticed the way the HOA made decisions quickly, without listening to everyone's feelings. The neighborhood looked perfect, but it was missing something important: heart. Tom's eyes traveled to the large resort lake at the center of the community. It was beautiful, sparkling under the sun, surrounded by expensive homes and green lawns. The lake was a place where people came to relax, fish, or take boat rides. The HOA took great pride in it. But to Tom, the lake felt different. It was not a place of memories. It was a symbol of control, of rules that didn't care about people like him. The lake belonged to the HOA, and the HOA ruled the neighborhood. One afternoon, Tom walked by the lake and saw a small metal box near the edge. Curious, he opened it and found a valve inside. It was old and a little rusty, but it looked important. Tom wondered what would happen if someone turned it. For a moment, Tom's heart raced with a strange feeling. What if he could send a message? What if he could show the HOA how much their actions hurt the people they claimed to protect? But then Tom shook his head. No, he thought. This is not the way. Still, the seed of an idea was planted in his mind. The barn was gone. The neighborhood was perfect but cold. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way to make the HOA understand, to make them feel what Tom and his family felt. That night, Tom sat by the empty lot and looked at the stars. He thought about his children, about Mary, about the barn and the memories it held. He thought about the yellow wildflower growing in the dirt. Tom knew one thing clearly: he would not give up on what mattered most. The barn might be gone, but his fight for respect, for memory, and for family was just beginning. The neighborhood around Tom's house was changing fast. New families moved in, cars filled the streets, and the quiet days on the farm seemed like a distant memory. But Tom still found comfort in the simple things: the morning sun on his face, the birds singing in the trees, and the soft breeze that carried the scent of grass and earth. Despite the changes, Tom kept walking past the empty lot where the barn had once stood. Every time he looked at the open space, he saw not just dirt and weeds, but the place where his family's laughter had lived. He could almost hear the echoes of his children's voices, feel the warmth of the summer sun inside the old wooden walls. One afternoon, as Tom stood by the empty lot, he noticed something he hadn't seen before: a small bird's nest hidden in the branches of a nearby tree. The tiny nest was fragile, but inside, little eggs waited quietly. Tom smiled softly. Life was still moving forward, even in the places where things had been lost. That day, Tom's son Max came home from school, excited about a project he had to complete. "Dad," Max said, "we need to learn how to take care of our neighborhood. I'm going to write about what makes this place special." Tom looked at his son and felt a new kind of hope. Maybe there was a way to save what mattered: not just the barn, but the spirit of the community. Later that week, Tom went to a neighborhood meeting. the HOA had called a gathering to talk about new rules for the community. The large room was full of people, all sitting quietly, waiting for the board members to speak. As the meeting began, the HOA president stood up and spoke clearly. "We want to keep our neighborhood safe and beautiful," he said. "We have strict rules about what can and cannot be on your property. This is to protect everyone's investment." Tom listened carefully, but inside, he felt a growing sadness. The words sounded cold and distant. The HOA cared about money, about appearances, but not about people or memories. When the meeting opened for questions, Tom raised his hand. "What about the people who have lived here for years? What about our history? Can't there be room for old things that matter to us?" The room went quiet. The president answered politely but firmly. "The rules apply to everyone. We must think of the whole community, not just individuals." Tom felt a quiet frustration but said nothing more. As the meeting ended, he walked outside and took a deep breath. The wind was cool on his face, but his heart was heavy. That evening, Tom sat by the small lake in the center of the neighborhood. The water was calm and clear, reflecting the pink and orange colors of the sunset. Families were walking nearby, children playing and laughing. Tom watched the water carefully. He remembered the metal box he had seen near the edge of the lake, the one with the valve inside. It was old and hidden, but it controlled the lake's water. The lake was a powerful symbol of the HOA's control, but it was also a place where people came to relax and enjoy nature. Tom wondered what would happen if someone used that valve. What if the water slowly drained away? The thought made his heart beat faster. It was a dangerous idea, but it also felt like a way to speak without words. Still, Tom knew that acting too quickly could cause harm. The lake was home to fish, birds, and plants. Draining it suddenly could hurt the neighborhood and the people who lived there. Tom didn't want to hurt anyone. He only wanted the HOA to understand how much the barn meant to him and how unfair their rules could be. Over the next few days, Tom watched the lake and the neighborhood carefully. He noticed how the HOA kept tight control, making decisions without listening to the people who lived there. The perfect lawns and new houses hid a growing tension, a quiet struggle between rules and memories, control and freedom. One morning, as Tom walked near the lake, he saw a group of children playing near the water's edge. Their laughter was bright and happy, reminding him of his own children playing in the barn so many years ago. Tom felt a mixture of joy and sadness. That afternoon, Tom visited Mary's garden. She was planting flowers near the porch, her hands busy in the soil. "You seem quiet today," she said softly. "Are you still thinking about the barn?" Tom nodded. "Yes. It feels like a part of me is missing. But I also feel something else, like maybe there is still a way to make things right." Mary smiled gently. "We'll find it together. Sometimes, the hardest things teach us the most." Tom looked at her and felt a small flame of hope. Maybe he didn't have to fight alone. Maybe, with patience and courage, he could find a way to protect what he loved. That night, Tom lay awake, thinking about the barn, the lake, and the neighborhood. He thought about the people who had supported him, and those who had turned away. He thought about the future, uncertain but full of possibility. As the moonlight filled the room, Tom made a quiet promise to himself. He would find a way to protect his family's memories. He would find a way to speak, even if no one was listening yet. The barn was gone, but Tom's story was not finished. The nights were quiet now, but Tom's mind was full of noise. He kept thinking about the barn, the memories it held, the laughter it once echoed, and the empty space it left behind. The neighborhood had become too perfect, too controlled. And the more Tom saw the HOA's rules shaping everything, the more he felt a small but growing fire inside him. One evening, after dinner, Tom decided to take a walk to the resort lake at the center of the community. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The water sparkled gently, calm and peaceful. Families sat nearby, watching the ducks and listening to children's laughter. The lake was beautiful, but it was also a symbol of the HOA's control, a place where everything had to look just right. As Tom walked along the shore, he found the small metal box he had seen before, near the dam. It was hidden behind some bushes, dusty and forgotten. He knelt down and opened it. Inside was the valve, a simple round handle that controlled the flow of water out of the lake. Tom turned the handle slowly with his fingers. He heard the water move, soft and steady, flowing out into a small stream. The lake was connected to this valve, and with one twist, the water could drain away. His heart pounded. The idea was dangerous, but also tempting. What if, by draining the lake, he could make the HOA understand the pain they caused when they destroyed his barn? What if they felt a loss as deep as his own? But then, Tom shook his head. He thought about the fish in the lake, the birds that came to drink, the children who played by the water. Draining the lake suddenly would hurt more than just the HOA. It would hurt the community. Tom closed the metal box and covered it again. He decided to leave it alone for now. But the idea stayed with him, quiet and powerful, like a secret waiting to be told. That night, Tom lay awake thinking. The barn was gone, and the empty space felt like a wound in his heart. The HOA had taken something precious without understanding what it meant. But maybe, he thought, there was a way to speak that would be louder than words. Over the next days, Tom watched the neighborhood more closely. He noticed the rules the HOA enforced: the strict fences, the trimmed lawns, the no toys outside signs. The neighborhood looked perfect, but it felt empty. Tom wanted to remind everyone of what was lost. He wanted to bring back the warmth and the memories that the barn had held. But he knew that fighting the HOA directly would not work. They listened only to rules, not to people. One afternoon, Tom met his friend Sam again. Sam was a wise man with gentle eyes, who always knew when Tom was troubled. "Have you thought about what you really want?" Sam asked. Tom sighed. "I want them to understand. I want them to see that the barn was more than just an old building. It was family, memories, and love." Sam nodded slowly. "Sometimes, actions speak louder than words. But be careful. Make sure your actions don't hurt others." Tom agreed. He knew Sam was right. He did not want to be angry. He wanted change. A few days later, Tom took his children to the lake. Max and Lily ran along the shore, skipping stones and laughing. Tom smiled, feeling the old happiness from the barn days. He showed them the metal box and the valve hidden behind the bushes. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. Max looked curious. "No, Dad." Tom explained gently, "This valve controls the water in the lake. If you turn it, the water can flow out." Lily's eyes grew wide. "Why would anyone do that?" Tom smiled softly. "Sometimes, people do things to make others listen. But we must always think about the consequences." Max nodded thoughtfully. "We don't want to hurt the lake or the fish." "No," Tom said. "We want to protect what we love." That night, Tom wrote a letter to the HOA board. He told them about the barn, about what it meant to his family, and how its loss hurt him deeply. He asked them to listen and to remember that rules were made for people, not the other way around. The next day, Tom delivered the letter personally. The board members took it quietly, their faces unreadable. Days went by without any answer. One morning, Tom heard loud voices near the lake. He walked quickly and saw a small group gathered around the metal box. Someone had turned the valve. Water was flowing out of the lake, slowly but surely. Tom's heart raced. The lake was draining, and people were starting to notice. Children stopped playing. Adults looked worried. Tom stepped forward and spoke calmly. "Please, stop. We must think about what this will do to the lake, the animals, and the neighborhood." The crowd looked at him, surprised to see Tom there. One woman said, "Why would someone do this? It's destroying the lake." Tom took a deep breath. Sometimes, people feel unheard. They want others to understand their pain. I've been hurt too when the barn was torn down. But we can't hurt each other or the things that bring us joy. Slowly, the group helped Tom turn the valve back. The water stopped flowing out, and the lake began to fill again. Tom looked at the water, calm and still. The lake was safe, for now. That night, Tom sat with Mary on the porch. "I almost did something I might regret," he said quietly. Mary held his hand. "You didn't, and that shows your true strength. Sometimes the hardest battles are won with patience and love." Tom smiled, feeling a weight lift from his heart. The barn was gone, but the fight to protect what mattered was still alive. And now, with careful thought, maybe there was a way to bring his community back together. The days after the lake incident were quiet but full of change. Tom felt the weight of what almost happened, and he knew he had to find a better way to heal the neighborhood and himself. The barn was gone, but the memories still lived inside him, and now he wanted to share those memories with others. One sunny morning, Tom sat at his kitchen table with Mary and the children. Max and Lily were busy drawing pictures. Some showed the old barn, others showed the lake with ducks and fish. Tom looked at their colorful drawings and smiled. "We need to find a way to bring everyone together," Tom said softly. "Maybe if we show people what we lost, they will understand." Mary nodded. "That's a good idea. Sometimes people forget the value of things until they see them clearly." Tom decided to organize a community gathering, something simple and warm, where neighbors could share stories about their homes, their memories, and what made their neighborhood special. He hoped it would help the HOA see the neighborhood not just as a place of rules, but as a place full of hearts and stories. Tom talked to a few neighbors he knew still felt the same way. Some were happy to help, while others were cautious. But slowly, word spread about the gathering. On the day of the event, Tom and Mary worked together to prepare. They set up tables in the community park near the lake, covered with cloth and decorated with flowers. There were photo boards showing pictures of the old barn, family gatherings, and past celebrations. Tom had even gathered a few old tools and items from the barn to display. As people began to arrive, the atmosphere was warm and hopeful. Children ran around playing, while adults looked at the pictures and started sharing their own stories. One woman, Mrs. Davis, came up to Tom. She said, "I never knew the barn meant so much to your family. I'm sorry for what happened." Tom smiled kindly. "Thank you. It wasn't easy, but we want to remember what the barn stood for: family, love, and hard work." Mr. Lee, another neighbor, shared a story about his own childhood. "I grew up in this neighborhood when it was still farmland. We didn't have fancy rules then, but we had each other. I hope we can find a way to balance the past and the present. The HOA board members were invited too. Some came quietly, curious about the gathering. Tom watched as they looked at the pictures and listened to the stories. It was the first time many of them truly saw the people behind the houses and the lawns. Mary spoke to the group. We all want a safe and beautiful neighborhood. But it's also important to remember that homes are about more than appearances. They are about memories, family, and community. The president of the HOA, Mr. Collins, finally spoke. I admit, I didn't realize how much the barn meant to some of you. Maybe we have been too focused on rules and not enough on people. Tom felt a small hope growing. We can work together, he said. Rules are important, but so is kindness and understanding. The gathering ended with laughter and new friendships. People promised to keep talking and to find ways to bring warmth back to their neighborhood. In the days that followed, Tom noticed a change. Neighbors greeted him more warmly, and some even stopped to ask about his family. The HOA board began to discuss new ideas that included listening to residents before making decisions. One morning, Tom was surprised to receive a letter from the HOA. It wasn't a demand or a warning, but an invitation. They wanted to meet with him to talk about how to improve the community and honor its history. Tom felt a mix of surprise and hope. This was a chance to build something new. The meeting was quiet but respectful. Tom shared stories about the barn, his family, and what the neighborhood once was. The board listened carefully, asking questions and showing interest. Mr. Collins said, "We want to learn from this experience. Maybe we can create a space for memories like a small museum or garden where everyone can share what makes this place special." Tom smiled. That would be wonderful. Together, they began to plan a small community project to celebrate the neighborhood's history. It was a new beginning not just for Tom, but for everyone who called the place home. That evening, Tom walked by the lake. The water was calm and shining under the moonlight. The empty lot where the barn once stood was still bare, but Tom saw the wildflower growing stronger every day. He reached down and touched the flower gently. "This is just the start," he whispered. At home, Tom hugged Mary and his children tightly. The pain of losing the barn was still there, but now it was mixed with hope, a hope that love, memories, and kindness could rebuild what was broken. Tom knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would still be challenges, and the fight to protect what mattered was not over. But now, he had a new strength, a strength born from community and understanding. The barn was gone, but Tom's story was far from finished. It was a story of loss, of pain, but also of hope and new beginnings. And that story was just beginning to be told. After the successful community gathering, a new feeling spread through the neighborhood. People started talking again, not just about rules and appearances, but about memories and feelings. The cold walls of the past began to warm, slowly but surely. Tom felt lighter. For the first time in a long time, he believed that change was possible not only for himself and his family but for the entire community. The HOA board, inspired by the event, began meeting more often with residents. They invited Tom to join one of their discussions. At first, he was nervous. He worried that old tensions might return. But when he arrived, the room felt different. There was respect, curiosity, and a shared desire to find solutions. Tom spoke openly about his experience with the barn, the pain of losing it, and the importance of preserving memories. He talked about how rules were important but needed to be balanced with kindness and understanding. Mr. Collins, the HOA president, listened carefully. "We realize now that we have been focusing too much on rules," he said. Maybe it's time to create new guidelines, ones that protect the neighborhood's beauty but also respect its history and people. Tom felt hope growing in his chest. Over the next weeks, the HOA and neighbors worked together on a new plan. They decided to create a small community garden and memory space on the empty lot where the barn once stood. The garden would have benches, flowers, and a place for families to gather and share stories. Tom's children, Max and Lily, helped design the space. They drew pictures of flowers, swings, and even a small wooden sculpture to represent the barn. Their excitement spread to others, and soon many neighbors joined the project. Work began early one Saturday morning. People brought tools, plants, and decorations. Some planted flowers, others built benches. Tom found himself smiling as he watched children and adults working side by side. Mary brought homemade cookies for everyone. The smell of fresh earth mixed with laughter and friendly voices. It was a day full of hope and new beginnings. As the sun set, the garden was nearly complete. Tom stood beside Mary and looked around. The empty lot was no longer empty. It was alive with color, stories, and promise. "This is better than I imagined," Mary said softly. Tom nodded. "It's a place where we can all belong." The next day, the HOA held a small ceremony to open the garden. People gathered, some nervous, some excited. Tom spoke first. "This garden is a symbol," he said. "It reminds us that a neighborhood is more than houses and rules. It's about people, memories, and the connections we share." Mr. Collins stepped forward. "We commit to listening more, to working together, and to protecting both the beauty and the spirit of this neighborhood." Applause filled the air. In the weeks that followed, the garden became a gathering place. Families brought picnics, children played, and neighbors shared stories from the past and dreams for the future. Tom often visited the garden with his family. Sometimes, they sat quietly by the flowers, remembering the barn. Other times, they laughed and played, making new memories in a place that honored the old. One afternoon, Tom noticed a man he didn't know sitting on a bench, looking thoughtful. Tom walked over and introduced himself. The man smiled. "I just moved here," he said. "I heard about the garden and wanted to see it. It feels welcoming. Different from other neighborhoods I've known." Tom nodded. "That's what we're trying to build, a community where people feel at home." The man looked around and said, "I think you're doing a good job." Tom felt warmth in his heart. The garden was not just about flowers and benches, it was about building bridges between people. Life in the neighborhood began to change in small ways. The HOA listened more, and neighbors helped each other more. The perfect lawns stayed, but now they were filled with laughter and kindness. Tom's family grew closer, too. The pain of losing the barn was still there, but it was softer now, wrapped in love and hope. One evening, as Tom sat by the lake, he saw Max and Lily playing near the water's edge. They were laughing, chasing ducks, and skipping stones. Tom smiled, feeling grateful. The wildflower by the empty lot was still growing, strong and bright. It reminded him that even after loss, life could grow again. Tom whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." He knew the road ahead would still have challenges, but now he was ready. With his family, his neighbors, and a new spirit of understanding, Tom felt stronger than ever. The barn was gone, but its story and the story of the neighborhood was alive. And together, they would build a future full of hope. Months passed since the community garden opened. The neighborhood had changed in more ways than Tom ever expected. The cold silence that once filled the streets was replaced by laughter, friendship, and a new sense of belonging. The fight over the barn and the lake seemed far away now, but the lessons they taught stayed close to everyone's heart. One crisp autumn morning, Tom stood by the garden. The flowers were blooming in bright colors, and the wooden benches showed the marks of many stories shared. Max and Lily ran around, chasing each other with leaves falling like golden rain. Tom smiled, feeling a deep peace inside. But even with all this new hope, Tom knew that healing was not just about the garden or the lake, it was about people coming together, day after day, to build something better. Tom's neighbor, Mrs. Davis, came over with a basket of apples. "It's good to see the neighborhood alive again," she said warmly. "You brought us all together." Tom shook his head gently. "We all did. It wasn't just me. It was everyone who wanted more than rules, who wanted a true community." Mary joined them, her eyes soft with kindness. "And it started because one family's story mattered. Because someone stood up and said, 'This place is more than buildings.'" Tom looked at his children playing nearby and felt thankful. The barn was gone, but the memories of those days had grown into something new, a future filled with love, respect, and hope. One afternoon, the HOA called another meeting. This time, it was different. The board invited many neighbors, not just a few. The mood was open and honest. Mr. Collins stood at the front and spoke with a calm voice. "We have learned from the past. We want to move forward together. We are creating new guidelines that respect history, nature, and most importantly, the people who live here." The room was full of nodding heads and smiles. People shared ideas about community projects, parks, and events. Tom felt proud that his voice and the voices of others had made a difference. After the meeting, Tom walked outside with Mary. "We've come a long way," she said. "Yes," Tom agreed. "The barn was lost, but what we built after that is stronger than any building. It's our community." One evening, as the sun dipped low, Tom stood by the lake. The water was calm and clear, reflecting the sky's soft colors. The metal box with the valve was still hidden near the dam, but Tom no longer feared it. It was a reminder of what could have been lost, but also of the strength they had found. He thought about the journey from the pain of the barn's destruction to the garden that now bloomed. The fight had been hard, but it had taught everyone the power of listening, patience, and love. Max came to stand beside him, holding a small wooden bird carved from a piece of old barn wood. "Dad, can we put this in the garden?" Tom smiled and nodded. "That's a perfect idea." Together, they walked back to the garden and placed the bird on a bench, a symbol of the barn's spirit living on. As night fell, the neighborhood glowed softly with porch lights and quiet voices. Tom looked around and felt the full weight of the journey. The barn may have been destroyed, but something much greater had been created. A community. A home. A place where memories, past and future, could live side by side. Tom took a deep breath and whispered, "This is where we belong." And with that, the story of loss became a story of hope, a story that would be told for generations to come.